Sparta Township, Municipal Building, 65 Main Street, Sparta, New Jersey. The time is 7:06. The regular meeting is now opened at 7 p.m. Executive session was opened and closed. All council meetings are now live streamed and can be viewed at the following link, www.youtube.com/SpartaTWP/streams. Adequate notice of this meeting was provided to the public and the press on January 10th, 2025 by delivering to the press and posting on the township website a copy of the notice. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Scott.
Here.
Councilman Blumetti.
Here.
Councilman Chiarello.
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. Let's stand and salute the flag, please.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to ask for a brief moment of silence. Newark lost a police officer last week, Joseph Azcuna. Also, another police officer was wounded, and bystanders were also injured in a police shooting. So please take a moment of silence to recognize these officers. Okay, thank you. Okay, tonight we're starting off with a proclamation. This is one of the proclamations I kind of wish I didn't have to do. The reason why, I wish it didn't exist. But a lot of people are suffering from long COVID, and the science is still trying to catch up with how to diagnose it, how to treat it. But we do have people in Sparta suffering from this. And so I will read this proclamation, and then I have someone that I will present it to. Long COVID awareness. Whereas long COVID, also known as post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 infection, continues to affect millions of people worldwide, leading to the prolonged symptoms and serious health challenges long after initial COVID-19 infection that can last weeks, months, or even years. And whereas individuals suffering from long COVID experience a wide range of debilitating symptoms, including but not limited to fatigue, brain fog, shortness of breath, joint pain, heart issues, making everyday activities difficult and diminishing quality of life. And whereas research and understanding of long COVID are ongoing, and while significant progress has been made, more attention, resources, and support are needed for those living with the condition. And whereas it is essential to raise awareness about long COVID in order to provide accurate information, reduce stigma, and ensure that those affected receive the proper care, treatment, and resources. And whereas the continued collaboration among healthcare providers, researchers, public health officials, and affected individuals is necessary to support long COVID sufferers and advance research efforts toward understanding the long-term impact of COVID-19. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Sparta does hereby proclaim the month of March as Long COVID Awareness Month and encourages all residents to take part in raising awareness, supporting research, and ensuring that those living with long COVID receive the care and resources needed. And so tonight we have Sparta resident Amanda Bulkley. Maybe I'm mispronouncing, I apologize. You can tell me how to pronounce it correctly, but I have this proclamation for you if you'd like to come forward.
I am a teacher, so I
Well,
can talk
you
very
got-
I have a teacher voice.
Well, you can't hear it. It's on.
This is my son Braden. Today is his 11th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Raiden. Happy birthday to you.
3 years ago, our lives changed dramatically, and very suddenly, when Braden developed several scary symptoms after a COVID infection. And it took a year of several misdiagnoses to finally get the diagnosis of post-COVID neuroinflammation. And since then, we have worked tirelessly researching, finding doctors, finding treatments, finding a school situation that would be enough for him and be able to support him. And, this year I found out about Long COVID Awareness Month for the first time and decided that this was going to be my mom mission, was going to be to raise awareness within our community, within our schools, within our houses of worship, our neighborhoods. And Jim was so kind to help me out with lighting the building teal for Long COVID awareness. And then this was just an extra surprise and honor that we could accept this on behalf of the town, and just raising awareness and support and hope for anybody else who is suffering in our community. So thank you all very much.
You may have to just use your fingers to
He
eat it.
has no.
Or take it off.
Yes, so here you go. Yeah, best wishes.
Happy
to you.
birthday.
Thank you.
Birthday.
Happy health.
Oh, of course.
Happy healthy birthday.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bring whoever you want up for the picture.
John, do you want to come? You leave the phone with somebody else,
And I'm-
and you
I
be in
will
the
it, or
picture.
you-
And thank you, everybody, for your patience. A little just fun thing we're doing for COVID awareness. So can I have my little bag? Here's just our little. This one for the
Okay. For everyone. Okay, thank you.
Aw,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you. so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
You.
Give it to you right now. Okay, no, please, no. That's not my idea.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Neil, the microphone?
Maybe you'd want to.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask him? You want to ask him? Okay.
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 Okay, we are now at the approval of minutes portion of the evening. May I have a motion to approve the January 14th, 2025 regular meeting minutes as presented?
Make a motion?
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 The January 14th, 2025 regular meeting minutes have been approved. Manager Zepp, may I have the manager's report?
Sure thing. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Sparta residents, both present and on our YouTube stream. Tonight, I get the privilege of appointing another Sparta Fire Department volunteer. At the recommendation of Fire Chief Ryan Odom, I am pleased to appoint Thane Arnold as a new member of the Sparta Fire Department. Mr. Arnold is a lifelong resident of Sparta, has a deep connection to our community. He is second-generation firefighter, following in the footsteps of his father, Keith Arnold, who served as the department's chief in 2011. Chief Odom is confident that Mr. Arnold will successfully complete the New Jersey state-mandated Firefighter 1 requirement and become a valuable asset to the department. Welcome, Thane. In our Parks and Recreation Department, registration for the summer day camp at Camp Sacagawea is now open. The weeks are filling up quickly, so don't delay in registering your child for 2025. More information and registration links can be found on the Township's website under Parks and Recreation by clicking the day camp link. Spring is in the air, and the park staff are busy prepping all the ball fields for baseball and softball as weather permits. They are also painting lines for lacrosse and soccer and moving the cricket pitch from Field 1 at Station Park to White Lake between the two softball fields. The popular track and field program is now full, with training beginning on March 18th. In the township operations, this past week, our grant writer informed us of opportunities being offered by New Jersey Senator Cory Booker and Senator Andy Kim for congressionally spending request grants. These grants are typically for large infrastructure-based projects. We are submitting a request for $400,000 towards sewer pump upgrades at our White Deer Plaza location. We are optimistic about receiving the award. Chief McCarrick will now present his portion of the manager's report.
Thank you, Manager Zepp. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Tonight, Mayor had asked me to speak about a program that our department and many of the departments in our county have and are participating in, and it's called the Arrive Together program. So approximately 2 years ago, the state started the Arrive Together program, and what that is the program started off as a pilot program in Sussex County, and we participate. Almost every law enforcement agency in the county has participated and is in it. So the Arrive Together program is a joint effort with participating police departments and mental health service providers to enhance and support law enforcement in response to certain behavioral health and crisis calls. So in Sussex County, we participate in the portion of the Arrive Together program called the Arrive After portion of this program. And what that means is that law enforcement will contact a mental health service provider after an encounter with an individual who may need mental health services. There's oftentimes that our officers go to mental health crisis calls, and we have a pretty good record of actually getting them to a mental health provider right at that time, usually Newton Medical Center, Atlantic Health. So the mental health professionals will help follow up with a designated time frame in this case and provide services where they can. And the provider for Sussex County is through Atlantic Health. So the purpose of this method is to hopefully provide these services in order to prevent the possibility of future issues that may occur or pose a potential dangerous situation for not only law enforcement, but obviously for the individual that is in crisis. There has been discussion just recently at some of the meetings that I have attended on a state level about extending this program for counties like such as Sussex County. And the thought is to have a mental health professional possibly riding with a critical incident trained officer. And this officer, whatever shift that is during that time, would be an individual who would respond to other municipalities amongst the county, specifically towards mental health and crisis calls. And so what we're trying to do, obviously, on this end is to get the mental health services as soon as possible to prevent us from having to use force. All this is tracked. It's tracked through our benchmark portal, which is a state regulated portal. And so anytime we do a referral, the mental health clinicians will actually enter that into the portal and see how it's working out.
Thank you. Yeah, what precipitated asking Chief McCarrick about this is 2 weeks ago I attended the conference of mayors in Florham Park, and there was multi-hour long presentation about the Arrive program and the successes that towns have had ARRIVE is simply an acronym. It's called Alternative Responses to Reduce Instances of Violence and Escalation. And so they've been able to put this program to very good use in a variety of ways, because every town has, someone who's struggling with mental health. And then unfortunately, sometimes their first interaction is with the police. And so what this enables to do is get them the care that they need. And there's even been, someone shared about certain expansions of it where, say someone's involved in a very, gruesome kind of accident, and afterwards is suffering from kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome. They have used the contact with the police department as a way to get mental health services after that. And so it's a way to get people access to mental health care that they otherwise wouldn't have. So it's worked really well. And, the healthier our population is mentally, that also reduces incidents of crime. It reduces the police having to continually respond to someone who's in mental health crisis. So it's been a very successful program, and I'm glad that, our department has been kind of at the forefront in Sussex County of doing it. And so I think many kudos to you and your department for getting ahead of this and jumping on it, because it's been very successful in other towns. So thank you.
You're welcome. Mayor, I'd just like to thank you, on behalf of myself and law enforcement, for taking the moment of silence. On behalf of the department, I want to extend my sincere condolences to the family, the friends, and the Newark Police Department for the passing of Detective Joseph Ascuna, who tragically lost his life this past Saturday. Every day, the men and women in this profession across the nation put on a uniform to go out and serve the communities that we live in. And unfortunately, it's moments like this that remind us the effect that it will have on somebody, and you just don't know what that day is going to bring. In Sparta, we have a great community. We have great officers, and it's our point in our mission to serve to the best of our ability. And working with our community makes us feel safe at the same time. So thank you, and condolences to Newark and the other officers. That concludes my report.
Yeah, thank you. And, again, please send our, condolences to your, other officers, and also our just profound respect. I mean, I think that I've told you on numerous of times that admire the courage that it takes. You don't know what you're going to get when you pull a car over. You can't envision that. And that takes a lot of courage to do that. And, those of us who aren't in that profession, the worst thing that will happen to me in a day, I may get a paper cut, but you and your officers every day encounter danger, and it's much appreciated, and the results show, and what a fantastic town we have, and also how well you have done. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Anything else in your, okay? May I have a
question
motion?
about the manager's report. So Manager Zepp, you mentioned that the cricket field was moved to the softball fields. Is that field lighted? Did you find out?
It is not. I understand that the recreational director, Gene Montemurano, has worked out scheduling with the sports groups who would be utilizing it, so that hopefully they wouldn't require lights with the scheduling changes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Manager Zepp or Chief McCarrick? Okay. May I have a motion to accept the manager's report?
I'll make a motion to accept the manager's report.
I'll
Second. Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The manager's report is approved. Next up is the first public comment period.
Approve the minutes.
And this is limited to items that are not on the agenda. So if you have something that you want to talk about that you find on the agenda, now is not the time. So again, it's for items that are not on the agenda. And unfortunately, if you do start talking about items that are on the agenda, I'll politely ask you to wait until the appropriate time. Thank you. So please, again, state your name and address for the record, and also be mindful of our 5-minute limit. Thank you.
Okay, hello. First of all, thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Sylvia Salone, 2 Megan Terrace, Sparta. The reason why I'm here is because there's an upcoming meeting, and I wanted to let you know, as the executive director of New Jersey Forest Watch, I've been a resident of Sparta since 2008. My family and I came from Bergen County and wanted to live in an area that honored its forests and its wildlife, and so we found ourselves in Sparta. Unfortunately, in 2015, I'm going to give you some background history, a logging or forest stewardship plan came out 2 days after Christmas. I got involved then, became a member of the Highlands Coalition, and in 2020, when we saw that the state, and this is specifically the New Jersey DEP Division of Fish and Wildlife, was looking at other areas across the state to continue their logging sham, our group formed a 501c3 called New Jersey Forest Watch, and we are here to protect and preserve and honor our public lands. And as a reminder for the public, if they don't know, Green Acres is where a lot of our public lands fall under. Sparta Mountain is 100% Green Acres funded. And we understand, since the DEP is presenting, we wanted to inform you of our efforts because logging is happening right now on Sparta Mountain. And unfortunately, the state has not listened to the public comments that have been presented early on in the plan. And what you'll find is things like bar graphs, statistics, and data can all be manipulated or misused to deceive the public and our own elected officials to support an agenda or an argument by presenting data in a distorted or selective way. With that, the New Jersey DEP has logged already 12 sites, 139 acres on Sparta Mountain, which when you think about it, it's equivalent to 105 football fields. So visually, think about that. This is maturing forest in a time when our forests are our most critical components to address not only climate change, but water, air, carbon sequestration. All of this is being funded through various grants, and private organizations are benefiting from these at the expense of taxpayers. These are our public lands that the resources are being sold to loggers. A lot of times out of state, we've had logging trucks come from Canada and Quebec. And so with that, our conclusions are science-based investigations, and there's absolutely no benefit to this logging, to the state and to its people. With that, we have provided much documentation that goes through the rebuttal of why the state thinks logging is a good thing. And this is all based on peer-reviewed science, which is something, unfortunately, the state has ignored. With that, these are just some examples. And before I do that, because I've got 1:40, there is a new proposed bid for a new logging plan. The current plan goes till 2027, and I want the council to know that the state has already sent out bids to do another logging plan. And if that were to be the case, Sparta Mountain is going to be 80% logged in this time, and this is unacceptable. It is a high conservation value forest in the Highlands region, where 70% of the state gets its drinking water from, and there is no peer-reviewed science that says logging forests is good for the people or good for the biodiversity, good for ecosystem services, watershed, etc. And if you hear otherwise, it's a sham. And I encourage you to do your due diligence, to look at the science, the peer-reviewed science. And I've provided a whole entire package for you folks. I will also follow up an email because I didn't want to make all the copies because we're trying to save trees, right? So digital is the way to go. Additionally, as you can see, we're very passionate. This is an issue. There's a lot of controversy. It shouldn't be controversial. When you think about it, deforestation, when it happens in places like the Amazon, right? We all say, this is horrible. This shouldn't happen. Why is it acceptable to have it happen in the most densely populated state of the country, which is New Jersey? We're living in a very Orwellian world right now, and I hope all of you really take the time to look at that peer-reviewed science and help us preserve and protect Sparta Mountain. Thank you.
I wanted to, again, thank you. So I want to let you know that so what happened was the DEP contacted me about the what they call the forest stewardship plan, and gave me a notice of that. And so what I did, I contacted them and said I would like representatives from the DEP to come to Sparta to explain what this stewardship plan is, what were the objectives when the plan was initially rolled out, and then tell us how are you meeting those objectives. And I do understand that there's a fair amount of criticism about this program. And so I don't think we can have, in one meeting, simply the DEP and then the other side gets to present. So I think what I will end up doing is trying to get some subject matter experts to come 2 weeks after the DEP to also present their side. I understand there's a fair amount of scholarship on this, including some scholars that are in New Jersey, particularly I think at Drew University as well. And so I want to give the public a full airing of this, that if the state is going to come in and say they're going to log for the purpose of improving the environment, then we need the proof that that's actually occurring. And so I think I think we as council have an obligation. This is our, this is our mountain, this is our open space. And so I haven't gotten a firm commitment from the DEP whether they'll be here in 2 weeks from today, but they have indicated that they do want to come. They'll have a PowerPoint presentation about it. They'll have some representatives here. We'll try to figure out whether, they can entertain questions or not. I don't want it to get off the rails where we take a 5-hour, meeting on this, so I'll have to figure that out. But in any event, I applaud you and thank you for staying on top of this important issue. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ken Dalsky. I live at 21 Winfield Drive in Parsippany. I'm the vice president of New Jersey Forest Watch. I'm a colleague of Sylvia's. I wanted to present a high-level overview of the science on a number of the arguments that the DEP is going to use to support its logging program, just to give you a sense of the information that we have, and we'll talk about it, after they give their presentation. So there's a number of things that they're going to claim. First of all, they're going to claim that there's not enough natural forest regeneration, that the forests are dying. The DEP claims that because of closed canopies, not enough sunlight is reaching the forest floor to grow new trees, so therefore they have to log. Intact canopy mature forests have been regenerating perfectly well for over 350 million years without the aid of humans. The argument for regeneration is often made in regard to oaks. The argument is that we have to cut down maturing 100 and 150-year-old oaks in order to grow new ones. The fact is that young oaks and other trees do sprout even in intact canopy forests, often in small open areas created by storms. However, the lack of regeneration is because of deer. Regeneration requires protecting forests against deer, not cutting down mature oak trees. DEP claims that young forests sequester carbon at a higher rate than old forests. A study by Dr. Beverly Law in Oregon debunked this theory. People think that because young trees grow fast and vigorous, they store carbon faster than old trees. But the study found that young forests, especially those established on logged land, are a net carbon source. They emit carbon for the first 20 years of their lives. In addition, carbon sequestration is a function of leaf area, and young forests have far fewer leaves than mature trees. Old trees and forests sequester more carbon per acre than young forests and store more carbon per acre than young forests, period. Once trees are cut, the same area can never make up the loss of carbon from removal of those trees. Forests are harmed by increasing damage and threats from invasive plant species. The DEP basically ignores this. By opening up the forest canopy, logging improves the habitat for invasive species, whose seeds come in on logging equipment and blow in the wind. More sunlight helps them grow faster. Invasive plants often overwhelm native plants and do not provide food for native insects, which birds need, thus making logged areas more challenging for bird nesting. Please watch the video on this problem that Julia Summers sent you via email on invasive plants that follow after logging. Logging harms water supplies. Forests keep water clean. Forests filter pollutants from the surrounding landscape, preventing the passage of pollutants to waterways. Nitrogen levels spike when forest cover levels falls below 66%. A study in New York found that clear cutting caused a large release of nitrate from soils and a release of inorganic aluminum, which is toxic. The large increase killed 100% of the caged brook trout in that area. Logging harms the soil. DEP ignores this. Many of the most serious and irreversible impacts of logging include the damage to soils and vegetation from the use of heavy logging equipment, which reduces invertebrates, fungi, and other parts of the forest food web, making it less supportive for forests. Soil exposed to the air by heavy machinery loses its carbon. Keeping all the wood on site is a crucial component of restoration and soil building. Forests that have the highest level of sequestration and water retention are those that leave wood on the ground. Dead wood in the forest has great value. Dead wood, whether falling or standing, is particularly important. Some people believe leaving dead trees in the forest to rot is a waste of resources. However, dead trees offer both shelter and food to many wildlife species and are a key to healthy habits. As trees decompose, nutrients are recycled into the soil, creating a microhabit favorable for the growth of new tree seedlings. 85% of the global deadwood carbon stock remains on forest floors and continues to retain its carbon each year. When you take the carbon out of the forest, we take the trees out of the forest, the carbon is released very, very quickly. DEP claims the storage of carbon in wood products helps justify logging. The DEP claims that the creation of long-lived wood products, such as construction material, furniture, etc., store a substantial amount of carbon and helps justify logging. We don't believe this is not true. In the United States, 76% of the annual domestic wood harvest is offset by carbon releases. Carbon removed from trees cannot sequester further carbon. The 2x4s in your garages are never going to sequester any more carbon. They're never going to grow and get bigger. The potential carbon sequestration from all trees cut to produce wood is forever lost. Finally, the DEP argues that mature forests have high risks of devastating fire. Dense forests do not burn more intensely than young forests. Large trees within mature and old-growth forests are the most fire-resistant members of the forest community because they accumulate a thick insulated bark and drop lower branches. When dead trees fall, they soak up and retain large amounts of soil moisture on the forest floor like giant sponges. Moisture-maintaining plants like tree ferns are only found in intact forests. Claims that our forests are tinderboxes because they're massively overgrown and unhealthy, and that fuel reduction treatments, i.e. logging, are the cure, is a myth promoted by the timber industry, politicians, and their allies in the U.S. Forest Service. In fact, log forests always burn at greater severity than intact forests. They are much drier than intact forests because they have no canopy to shield the wood from the sun, no trees to act as a windbreak. I realize this is a load of information thrown at you as if it came out of a fire hose. We just wanted to make sure you knew that there was such information when you hear arguments in favor of logging, or forest treatments, or habitat creation, or whatever the heck the DEP is calling it today. And we'll be very happy to go through this in much more detail after you hear from the DEP.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate the information. I look forward to having a full vetting of this issue. So thank you.
Copy of what I just.
Sure, if you want to send it to us and,
You can have this.
yeah,
Okay.
and we'll circulate it amongst the rest of
this is-
council.
I had to narrow that down. I spent all day.
I'm sure you did. Thank you very, very much.
Evening, Mike Devine, Oak Parkway. I got to say, I never really looked at this issue, but what he presented sounds like settled science. Most purists would argue that that doesn't exist, but if that's actually peer-reviewed outcomes, that's pretty solid indications. I know this is things not on the agenda. I just have a short process question. I hope you'll entertain it. I know you're going to, I think, vote on an ordinance change for the land use law. Will the public have a chance to comment on that before you vote?
With respect to are you talking about
Yeah, amending
we have
the
a
land.
hearing, as you know from your experience, a hearing on an ordinance does allow the public to comment on that. It's, you read the title of the ordinance and then the public comments on that ordinance, and then we'd vote afterward. With respect to ordinances that are simply introduced, there will not be any public comment prior to the vote on the introduction. That will follow the format, if it does pass as an introduction, when we get to the hearing, it will follow the same format, which will read the title of the ordinance, we'll have public comment on it, and that will be 2 weeks from now. So if people do have public comment on an ordinance that is simply being introduced, you'll need to do so at the last public comment period in the agenda.
I appreciate that. Now,
Sure.
you're right, I should know better, but if I look.
Everyone needs a reminder, Mike.
When you get to my age, you gotta, give me a break, will you? But it says, not to belabor, it says 7 is hearing of ordinance. Do you vote right after that because the public comments period is after the hearing?
Are you referring, no, on the hearing of an ordinance, it's, after we read it, it goes to public comment, and then the public can come forward on the hearing and speak about it. And then it goes back to council for comments, and then we move to have a vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Any other public comments about items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we have a few introduction of ordinances, and as I laid out to Mr. Devine, there, if these, expenditures, missed that one, sorry. Deputy Mayor Murphy, would you please read the expenditures for March 11th, 2025?
Yes, the grand total of the expenditures are $3,862,735.72.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the expenditures for March 11th, 2025?
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The expenditures for March 11th, 2025 have been approved. Now we're up to the introduction of ordinances, and as folks heard me with my dialogue with Mr. Devine, we're simply introducing ordinances at this time. If they pass and go to a hearing, there will be a public comment period specifically on that prior to voting on the ordinance. So we're going to try to stick to that. This is not the time for council to be deliberating the pros and cons of the particular ordinance being introduced. That's reserved to the hearing portion. However, if you want to make a public comment about these ordinances that are being introduced, the time to do so is at the public comment period at the end. Council will, attentively listen to your comments. That is something that will go into consideration in 2 weeks at the hearing before we actually vote on whether to adopt. So tonight is not an adoption of an ordinance that are being introduced. It's simply to hear it, to have it so it moves on to the next stage. So with that, Madam Clerk, could you please read the title of Ordinance 2507?
An ordinance of the Township of Sparta permitting Class 5 cannabis businesses within the township, adding definitions to Section 18-2 of the Township Code, deleting subsection 3 of Code Section 18-4.5H, prohibitive uses, and adopting new sections 18-4.7, C 23, 18-4.24, F 3, and 18-4.20, D 2, and permitting the operation of Class 5 cannabis licenses as conditional uses within the TCC and the C1 zones in the township.
Thank you. May I have a motion to introduce Ordinance 2507?
I move that we introduce ordinance 2507 as it was presented by the clerk.
May I have a second, please?
I will second.
Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilman Scott,
No.
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Chiarello,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murphy,
No.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. So Ordinance 2507 is introduced. It will now move to the next portion of the hearing phase, which will be in 2 weeks, and at that time, the public will have a more fulsome opportunity to comment on it. Again, you are able to comment tonight, just after the public comment period at the end. We're now up to the next ordinance that will be introduced. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title of Ordinance 2508?
Ordinance adopting a new Chapter 8 entitled Cannabis License Requirements of the Code of the Township of Sparta to add municipal licensure requirements for cannabis facilities.
May I have a motion to introduce Ordinance 2508?
I move that we introduce ordinance 2508 as it was presented by the clerk.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilman Scott,
Before we got there, I want to acknowledge that while this is not the day to make substantive comments, I hope you all come back in 2 weeks to help us with this. I owe my seat to the people of Sparta, and I know that the people of Sparta, or at least many of the people of Sparta, have indicated they are strongly against this ordinance. I sent out an email asking people to show up today. I couldn't get it out fast enough. My secretary got it out at 3 o'clock, and my inbox exploded at 4:30. All right, and there was letter after letter after letter after letter of people that do not want cannabis being sold in our town. There are multiple towns in this state that have.
I'm sorry, I
I'll
think
just
we're,
caution you.
Okay.
So we don't get
That's
into a
it. That's
policy
it.
discussion.
I've
Thank you.
made my position clear. Thank you.
Sure. So Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Scott,
No.
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Chiarello,
yes.
Deputy Mayor Murphy,
No.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. So ordinance 2508 is introduced. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title of ordinance 2509?
Ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 11, entitled Taxation and Revenue of the Code of the Township of Sparta to add new Section 2-62, setting forth a cannabis tax.
All right, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance 2509?
I move that we introduce ordinance 25-09 as read by the clerk.
May I have a second, please?
I will second.
Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilman Scott,
If everyone in
Just a
Sparta
vote.
smokes enough pot,
I'm sorry, just a vote,
To-
please.
I think
This-
we're up to the vote part.
we're not to, we're no comment here?
No, there's no comment on policy when we're introducing an ordinance.
Councilman Scott,
No.
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Chiarello,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murphy,
No.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. The ordinance 2509 has passed. Next up, we have another ordinance that will be introduced tonight. It's amending a prior ordinance. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title of ordinance 2510?
An ordinance of the Township of Sparta amending portions of Chapter 8 of the Township Code entitled Filming.
May I have a motion to introduce ordinance 2510?
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, may I?
May I ask what the purpose of the introduction is?
Oh, so the purpose, you'll find at the beginning of the ordinance, which states that no, that's the wrong one. Thank you. So yeah, it's spelled out in the first whereas clause. The New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission requires certain amendments to Chapter 8 of the Township Code, filming in order for Sparta Township to attain New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission's designation as a film-ready community. So we desire to amend it. So I think I had alluded to earlier that the Film Commission was getting around to trying to have some uniformity among the various filming provisions. There's 564 municipalities in New Jersey, and so the idea was so that when a film comes, that they sort of know what they're dealing with from town to town. And so we had submitted our ordinance to them, and they got back to us about certain changes, particularly with respect to the definition of a motion picture had to go up. There's also changes with respect to, we have a fee schedule. I think their fee schedule is, again, to have some uniformity, but you'll see in that fee schedule, there's, substantial fees that are charged to some of these. For example, a street closure for a municipality like Sparta, which has over 10,000 residents, would cost them about $5,000. So it was a way to have sort of uniformity in the fee. So that's the purpose of the amending the filming code.
Thank you.
I would like to, I'm fully in support of being film ready and showcasing Sparta. Although reading these changes, there are some inconsistency issues that don't seem to work. I'm fine with the motion picture definitions. I'm fine with the fee schedule. Where I'm concerned, and I'm leading to a motion with this, is that the timeframes are all shrunk dramatically. So instead of being 10 days for the township manager to, or the deadline of being at least 10 days before the shooting, it's now 4 days. And you'll see in a moment that doesn't allow time for a couple other things here, like town manager needs to send it out to different parties, like the police chief, the fire, et cetera, and then ask for responses. There used to be 5 days for each of those steps. Now it's 3. The issue with that is that if a resident wants to, or a business wants to file an objection with the town manager, used to have 5 days. Now it's 3 days, but at that point, the license would have already been issued. So in other words, going from 10 days and 10 days now down to a 4-day period doesn't allow time for 2 other pieces to happen, right? Doesn't allow time for the town manager to receive it in time to send it around to those parties, and a deadline for the parties to give back any concerns or questions. It's too compressed. It doesn't allow, it's saying 6 days, but there's only 4 days allowed. And then again, back to the applicant has to notify 3 days before shooting any resident or business that's in the area that may be affected. And they have a chance to then send to the town manager concerns or questions. But they only have 3 days to do that. And that could come in when the license is already issued. So again, I'm not against it. There's just inconsistency issues with the numbers here about the process. And I'm concerned that it shrunk down so much that's going to put a undue burden on the town manager, the police chief, the fire chief, and then any resident or business owner that wants to ask questions or submit a concern about this shooting happening just 3 days away from when they find out about it.
Is there a mechanism for the public to comment? I don't recall any.
Mayor, just as
So
a,
an application comes in, can the resident, how does that resident
You know,
know?
I
that
think
it's
we're
something-
now treading into,
As
the
a point
same
of order.
policy discussion that we
but-
prohibited with respect to
No, it's not a
cannabis.
policy discussion so much as structurally, the ordinance doesn't seem to hold.
Well,
up.
yeah, and it says that the permit holder gives 3 days notice before the requested shooting date to applicants, to businesses or merchants or residents who might be affected by it. And they have 3 days to then get back.
I just think as a point of order, it's how you qualify these comments.
So we can,
We should be reserving it if we're going to be consistent with the prior ordinances to the hearing.
Yeah, and
I
I'll-
understand, but so the alternative then is we introduce it and that's fine. And then if we want to make any changes to it, if the changes are substantive, we have to go
Correct.
back to the beginning again.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
So let me ask a question is, increasing from 4 to say 7 days instead of, it used to be 10. Or instead of being 3, it was 5. Is that a material change at the hearing, in your opinion?
I don't think it changes the intent and the effectuation of the ordinance, my opinion, so I don't think that would be a material change.
Yeah, so I think the comments about the notice period, I think that they would, if you have them, we can, vote on them at the hearing stage. Again, I think the law on materiality really has to go to the heart of the ordinance, and this is simply changing sort of notice periods. And so if there are changes to that, people want to try to expand it, I think that would, be a non-material change. In fact, I think they've done that in other cases, not with respect to film, but other areas where a township has decided at the hearing stage to amend the ordinance. And so I think there'll be full and fair opportunity to do that. I will say that the notice periods that are in there are from the New Jersey State Film Commission. These are based on their analysis, based on them having an experience with other towns. And so my view is if they found that other towns are able to comply with that notice period sufficiently, I don't see any reason why Sparta can't. So it's not just coming out of nowhere, it's coming out of the commission that has the primary responsibility for dealing with this issue. But
Yeah,
again,
I agree, but we have a responsibility to make sure it can work, actually from a process standpoint. So
Well-
giving 1 day to, 1 day, if it comes in 3 days before shooting and we have to send it out to all those parties and get it back,
So that's something we can.
we could do it next time. Okay. I just want to make sure
It's a
we,
valid argument, but I think
we
that's,
protect
we do
the
that.
staff and also the residents and business owners.
Yeah, so we can discuss it.
yeah. at
We
the
can
hearing
discuss this
stage.
in 2 weeks, but, I mean, it's an extremely competitive environment in this film business. Yeah, every town in the state wants these films in their town. And, I mean, we must recall that all this work has been put together rather rapidly because of the fuss that was made by Councilman Chiarello a few months ago. And so here we are, we're complying with what the state has done, and I think that this is a good ordinance, the way it is. If we made a mistake, we can change it.
True, true. We can talk about it next time, Mark, but our interests are not the same as the state's necessarily.
Okay, you've made your
Okay.
point, so let's move on. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Scott,
Yes.
Councilman Blumetti,
No.
Councilman Chiarello,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murphy,
Yes,
Mayor Clark.
Yes. So ordinance 2510 has been introduced. Okay, we're now up to the hearing of an ordinance. So Madam Clerk, could you please read the title of ordinance 2504?
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the Township of Sparta amending Chapter 18 entitled Comprehensive Land Management Code to amend portions of Section 18-4.36 entitled PDRM2 Plan Development and Resource Management Area.
Okay, now it is open to the public for comment on ordinance 2504. So please limit your comments to ordinance 2504. And please state your name for the record and also your address, and please be mindful of the 5-minute limit.
My name is Gary Tunkovich, Tunkavige. I live at 740 Houses Corner Road. I fully am aware of the very limited matter that is under consideration regarding this ordinance. It's simply an amendment to PDRM 2. And we're not here to rewrite PDMR 2. It's settled law. But I have a very brief comment regarding this. When my family moved to Sparta 30 years ago, in 1995, that tract of land subject to PDRM 2 was known as the Dobbins Farm Tract. And at that time, it was zoned RC2, which was residential 5-acre lots. And only in approximately 2012, it was rezoned as PDRM2. I don't know how many of the council members may have been around or in this place 15 to 18 years ago. But, okay, so you know all the nights that the planning board meetings went on. And it was a very controverted issue. The zoning was changed basically at the behest of the then owner of that property. To our dismay, the zoning change was passed. It is what it is. So I just have two, what I think are brief questions. One of them concerns the fact that my understanding is that this ordinance to amend PDRM 2 was introduced by the council at the January meeting. So my first question is, what prompted this? Everything is done for a reason. Was this because to comply with some regulation, a state or federal regulation regarding open land or land management? Was it because there is an application pending? Or was this related to lessons learned regarding the Demorest Road warehouse situation?
Do you
Do
want, I
you
can
have any other
answer- yeah,
questions?
wanna-
Yeah,
finish
finish
your
your
time limit.
questions, and then we can give you an
I
answer.
don't want to use up your time.
Yeah.
So if you have any other questions.
Do you have any other questions?
Okay, yes, the other question was, on the Sparta Township website, there are some maps. One of them is preserved land. And this shows PDRM2 as preserved land, and the category being open space dedications. There's another map on preservation priorities. This also shows PDRM2 as preserved land, and the adjacent property to the south, PDRM1, as being a preservation priority. This seems like a contradiction to me. How can it be preserved land, and at the same time, PDRM2 goes on and on and on about warehouses and loading docks and that sort of thing? I'm just confused in that regard.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's it.
Okay. I think, I'll turn it over to Councilman Blumetti, who was at the planning board at the time that this was, it originated with them, it's my understanding. I think he's probably the best person up here to speak on it.
Yeah, Gary. Thanks for your questions. They're good ones. So some of the history of this originated from the planning board back last year. The planning board was looking at the nearby zones, so PDRM1, Economic Development Zone, and those areas had been studied and changes had been put into place for those zones, but not PDRM2 yet. So the idea was to make PDRM2 more consistent with the surrounding zones. And basically it was to reduce the maximum building size, remove the distribution center use, add the impact statements. So it now requires a traffic study, an environmental impact study, and a community impact statement. So really it was to make it more consistent with the surrounding zones, to tighten up the intensity of use ability there, and to make sure that it was more consistent with the other ones. So it originated in the planning board, went through the process in the planning board with public input and revisions, and then it came to the council. It came this year because last year there was just no time left after it had started the process. We had to start again this year, so it came in January.
And the gap between January and now was to allow for the notification of the residents like yourself to receive the notification that there was a
So
change.
there's no application pending at this
No.
time?
No.
It was purely administrative gap
Yeah. it was
to allow
just,
for the notifications.
Yeah.
Okay,
this-
that answers that question.
Yeah, and this had probably started back in last spring or summer, I think, when the process started at the planning board, so it's not for any state regulation or any pending application.
Okay.
I'll take a crack at the second one, although I'm not an expert on it. My understanding is that this PDRM2 zone has a very limited number of actual parcels and owners, and that built into the deed restrictions is very tight controls about setting aside land to preserve. So I believe that what you're seeing there is land that's already preserved within the PDRM2 zone, and also stipulations that if other land is developed, a vast majority of that must be set aside for preserved lands.
Okay, because the map, again, I don't know if the map is in error or whatever, but it shows that entire PDRM2 as open space dedication. Now, at the January meeting of the planning board, which I attended, I asked Tom Collins, the planning board attorney, for a definition of open space dedication. He sort of rattled off a legal definition of it, and what I came away from that with was it is a mechanism by which a municipality can compel a landowner to maintain property in open space, and it's irrevocable.
I think we have to be mindful of the 5-minute limit. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I think part of the answer to your question is that that map probably shows a binary choice. I don't think 100% of the parcels are preserved, but maybe some portion of them. And so maybe the way the coloring of the map shows, it doesn't show every
Okay,
single
the map shows the entire portion.
Yeah, I don't believe that's accurate, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so you're saying it's a portion of it
Yeah.
is open space dedication.
Yeah,
That's
there's
my
a
understanding.
requirement for anything that happens there, a certain portion has to be dedicated for open space.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and I think another point you had asked whether this was in response to lessons learned. It was in response to lessons learned. So what happened, there's 2 terms ago, following an application that everyone's aware of, the planning board did pass new ordinances with respect to, I think, the Economic Development Zone and PDRM 1, which restricted certain size of uses to 175,000 square feet. The issue was that those same uses were permitted in PDRM 2, but there was no size limitation, as there were for the ED zone and the PDRM 1 zone. So the way we wanted to have consistency, right? Because if you wanted to restrict a certain square footage, but then someone could come to PDRM 2 with no restriction on the square footage, then you simply created a gigantic loophole that you could drive a tractor trailer through, no pun intended. But in any event, that's sort of the purpose of it. So it was to have consistency. I will add, though, our planning board is undergoing a master plan review. They will be looking at all different zones. And so I would encourage people who are concerned about this zone to participate in that process and to, I think you made some very good points about what this zone looked like in 2012 and then what it looks like now. And I would encourage you to participate in that process. However, the public, I know they're going to have opportunities for the public to weigh in. And the public really should take the opportunity to, because it's going to be an entire examination of all the various zones. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, real quick, I just wanted you to know, there is a preservation farmland there with the Anderson Farm. That definitely is preserved farmland forever. That is right on 15, just before Houses Corner Road.
Okay, that's what, PDRM 1?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, it may not be PDRM 2, but in any event, but yeah, no,
It's not
Across
two,
from the
yeah.
medical center.
Yeah, 2 is only on that one side of House's Corner.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on ordinance 2504?
I live at 734.
I'm sorry,
May
can you
want to pull
speak?
the microphone.
I'm
close.
Diane Shum. I live at 734 Houses Corner Road. I live next to him, and he had all the same questions I had. And I also thought it was preserved land. I was told by the previous owner that, I mean, I don't know how true it is, but he told me that they went through extensive things with lawyers to make sure it was preserved land in the PDR2. So I'm trying to figure out that as to if it's true or not, but I know him because our kids went to school together, so is one of the co-Franciscos.
Co-Francesco's?
Co-Francisco, yeah. The amendment here that you're trying to add, I'm very curious because, one, the buildings, I think, are huge. And in the original code, it says no trucking terminals. No trucking terminals. Suddenly, we have trucking terminals in this amendment. Is that my mistake? So to me, this looks like a loophole to add to the original amendment to say, oops, now we can have trucks, lots of them.
Any other questions, and then we can respond.
Yeah, I'd like to
Okay.
know that. To me, it suggests that eventually it will turn into a distribution center if they build a warehouse, because that's the size, looks to me, with all these trucking terminals that weren't allowed. And the purpose of the PDRM2 even says, the purpose of the zone is to allow planned developments within a district while simultaneously protecting natural resources and limiting impacts to the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Permitted uses in the PDRM2 will limit and protect residential character of the neighboring uses. I don't see any of that with big warehouses going in. And like you said, you guys said no one put in an application, but it's just strange how this is coming here as an application with nobody asking for it and pretty much laying the land for a big distribution center with all these trucking docks.
So actually, you have any more questions? I don't want to eat up your time. but-
No,
okay.
I would like to know how to find out the preserved land also. And why suddenly we have trucking terminals.
Yeah, I don't see that. Can you direct me to it?
Yeah,
I do see that it removes or it bans distribution centers. It does not add that.
No, I know, but it just looks like it's a leeway to, it's suddenly going to become not just a warehouse of things sitting because there's just so many doors allowed for these new buildings. It just, to me, it looks like a loophole. Trucking terminals, Chapter 18, comprehensive, A, B, C. D,
Are you looking at the
E.
ordinance that we're voting on tonight or
The
something else?
original ordinance that you're trying to add it into.
So the original ordinance, ma'am, has section B has permitted uses. It has office buildings, data centers,
Yes.
indoor
I'm in-
commercial.
I'm in E. Prohibited
E.
uses.
So that's prohibited.
Yes.
So trucking terminals respectfully are not allowed in this zone.
Right. So.
Yeah, in no way is it, so I think in no way does this ordinance allow a trucking terminal use. It's already prohibited under the pre-existing. In no way are we amending it.
It seems like reading it to me, it just looks like it's
'Cause
laying the
yeah.
ground for that. Do you know
Because
what
it
I
says
mean?
tractor trailer, but again, you have to follow the use. And so unless you saw a provision in here that said, we're now amending to make trucking terminals go from a prohibited use to a permitted use, trucking terminals are still prohibited under this ordinance. And so, the presence of, the word tractor trailer
But it
refers
just
to the
seems like the words are
distribution.
tripping over each other also, like all of a sudden now we have all these docks. And all this tractor trailer parking is allowed when parking was not allowed. It just contradicts itself.
Well, those things aren't being introduced here.
You're just adding in, you're amending the original code and you're adding in this and it just seems to.
They're actually replacing what's there. They're not adding them in. So in a lot of cases, they're reducing the intensity.
Well, it
So a lot of
says-
times where the text itself is being,
Says is hereby amended to add the following sentence to the end of the existing paragraph 4. I mean, that's the way I read it. Or it's supposed to be inserted after paragraph 4.
Yeah, the reason for that is what I alluded to in the previous answer was that the previous version of PDRM2 had no restriction on square footage. And so the reason why we had to add that is because if you don't add it, then there could be an application for something that could far exceed 175,000 square feet. And so the intent was to limit the square footage there. So that's what that language is there for.
Seems like a very large building to begin with. I'd say 50,000 square feet.
But I want to see if I can understand and rephrase your question. Are you concerned that in this zone where there is preserved land, that an applicant could use this ordinance to put their actual development on that preserved land? Is that what you're concerned about?
Yeah.
Okay. Would that even be possible?
If the land is preserved and restricted from development, the answer would be no.
No. What is the preserved land? That's what I don't understand either, because, we see maps online and we're told the land is preserved, and then we see another map that says PDRM2 right behind our houses and the lake, and it's.
So in fairness, if you allow us to review, there are no pending applications. We'll look at the interplay between the preserved land and the current uses. But what you should be assured of is that these amendments are further restricting intensive development. That was the intent of it. It may not go far enough for you. And as the mayor said, you should bring those concerns to the planning board and to the master plan committee and to this body. And this body will review the concerns of the residents.
And also just to keep in mind, the changes here need to stay consistent with the current master plan. So there are some barriers around this while the master plan is being reworked. So this could change again in the fall or in the winter when the master plan is redone and it has new guidelines for zoning and could change altogether. And then ordinances will need to be changed again to reflect those. But the current master plan this needs to kind of look back and bounce off against that.
the other issue could be that if there are preservations that are deed restrictions, we wouldn't know that in this ordinance. That would be individual deeds for the properties.
So if it was on a deed, you wouldn't have it on the map?
We wouldn't have it in, the ordinance governs the
Not
land use
necessarily.
laws for the entire zone, but if there are further deed restrictions in a lot in that zone, that wouldn't be governed by for the whole entire ordinance.
Yeah, and I don't, this ordinance in any way is not to circumvent where land has been preserved, to enable that land to then be developed. I think it's the actually opposite.
That's correct. If you have a survey, a land survey of the property, it usually, those surveys will show the deed restrictions. They'll pick them up from the county clerk's office and show you where the deed restrictions are. Any ordinance that we pass would not be able to supersede a deed restriction, generally.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
Jenny Derrick, stop into Sparta just to give a little bit of, maybe a little bit more detail to the questions. Right up in the front, in the bulk, under the bulk standards, under F4, regarding the open space or the preserved land. Second sentence, planned developments shall, on any lot within the PDRM2 zone, shall provide for open space of at least 55% of the planned development tract, but not less than 88 acres of forest to minimize the impact of contiguous areas of forest, core forest. So that's in the ordinance. It's going to stay in the ordinance from my understanding. That's a bulk standard that's not being touched by this. So that may answer the question about where is the preserved land. I think it may be amorphous to, there's only 2 lots in the zone. And so what I think this is speaking to is that of those 2 lots, these standards then come into play once there is an identified development. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other member of the public wishing to be heard on ordinance 2504?
Hi, Mike Devine, Oak Parkway. Excuse me if I'm just behind the times and I'm asking questions that I should know the answer to, but somebody just briefly tell me physically by landmarks that I know, where's PDRM2? Is it across from ShopRite? Is it on Houses Corner Road? Where is it at?
If you go down 15 north, make a right on Houses Corner Road, go down a ways, on the first section on the left is PDRM1, after that is PDRM2.
Okay, and I guess, pardon me, you talked about lessons learned. I feel almost like this is deja vu. We passed an ordinance before, whether intentionally or inadvertently or something less scrupulous, and we ended up in a big harangue. And I hope we're not going down that path again. Do you have any idea what the square footage is of the entire zone?
I don't off the top of my head.
The point I'm trying to get to is how many warehouses, even of this restricted size, how many warehouses could be fit in there? And is there any limit to the number of warehouses, which would have an additive effect on all the downsides of trucks and everything else?
Well, this greatly restricts it from what it is today. There's only 2 parcels on this lot, in the zone. There's only 2 parcels. And this restricts it greatly from what it is today. And each of those, any development application, as Ms. Derricks mentioned, needs to set aside a tremendous amount of preserved and open space. So,
Does that mean there could only be 2 warehouses total because there's 2 parcels? Or am I misinterpreting what you're saying?
I don't want to say for sure, but I would assume that's correct.
I don't know how big those parcels are.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And this is, again, and was meant to reduce the potential intensity here. And there's already a lot of restrictions in place for the PDRM2, even before we looked at it on the planning board level. There's a lot of set-asides for open space. There's a lot. This is just taking it down even further.
I think I heard that you couldn't pass an ordinance that can conflict with the master plan. I thought we did something like that very recently, maybe across from ShopRite. Didn't we change something there and that was contradiction to the master plan? Is that a precedent?
true.
Precedent for doing that? So my question is why do we have to have warehouses at all?
True.
Well,
I mean, I understand you're trying to define them, control them, limit them and everything else, but why do we need, if we're gonna change it, why don't we need them, have them at all? It's just
That's a great
retarded.
master plan subcommittee question, which you're on. So it's
And
a
I
great
believe me,
question.
I've asked it, so.
Yeah.
Seeing as how our master plan hadn't been done in 40 years, that's why we're redoing it.
Oh, I understand. But the last point is, I read in here a lot of mix of specifics and generalities. An example would be the specifics, X number of dock doors, this square far apart, X number of parking spaces, blah, blah, blah. And then the maybe less specific is, it has to have a campus setting, which is, in my mind, a little bit vague. But the point is, I don't see in here, this is a permitted use, this is conditional. If you don't, the results of your traffic study, if they're not acceptable, meeting the criteria we've established, that's basis for disapproval. Is that inferred, or does that show up somewhere else?
Because those aren't being changed by this thing that we're passing tonight.
Yeah,
We're
this
not
is-
replacing the sections that are permitted uses
Yeah.
and
Okay,
Okay, the
conditional uses.
previous thing that I would see. Okay, so you're saying you need a traffic study?
This isn't a retire replacement of that whole section. This is just a selective change in.
But are there criteria for the traffic study that if you don't meet this, you're disapproved, or would I find that in the previous language?
No, so the traffic impact study, environmental impact study, and the community impact study are new standards being added. And so if those standards are written into each of these, and if an applicant does not meet any of these criteria, and this is part of the zoning ordinance, they would need to secure generally a variance or a waiver, depending on how the requirements interpreted if they don't meet the requirements set forth in this amendment.
So we're not concerned that we don't explicitly say that, Mr. Dash, or what?
No, we do say that, right? So unless I'm misunderstanding, Mike, the question, the ordinance proposes certain impact studies that every application must submit in the PDRM2. And these impact studies are consistent with the prior impact studies required for the ED zone and the PDRM1 zone. And a planning board or a zoning board reviewing these standards would have to read the language of the standards and interpret them in a manner to create requirements that are set forth in here. And in those boards' review of these standards would have to tell the applicant whether or not they meet these standards. And if they don't meet these standards, they would need to seek the necessary relief. Is that the question?
Yeah, is that understood, or it's not explicitly said, at least in my reading, is that?
So it says section 3F is a required, so at a minimum, they would be required to present these studies, and they have certain elements. I mean, I understand what you're saying is, there's room for interpretation as to how these boards will execute these requirements.
And I think you might agree that room for interpretation is what's got us in trouble the last time, maybe. No, I'll leave it at that.
I would say, Mike, that for the environmental impact study, which is not brand new, there is a whole list of areas that must be addressed, but there's not specific standards for every single one of those, but that needs to be interpreted by the planning board or zoning board. The traffic impact study, there actually is almost a whole page. It talks about the types of impact, the trip generation rates, the peak generation rates, how many trips per 1,000 square feet, the length of service at the nearby traffic lights, and when you have to evaluate them, and if the service level changes any of those traffic lights in the area. So there is a lot around traffic, and that's pretty clear in here about what the limits are. So that's I feel good about that. And the community impact statement talks about population impact, facilities impact, services impact, financial impact. And again, there's not, line item specifics around each of those. Like if you add 10 kids, it's okay. If you add 50 kids, it's not. But those need to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis at the planning board.
And if the planning board reaches a conclusion in the absence of specific statements as to permitted or not, doesn't that allow opportunity for reclamo or appeal or whatever else?
You mean permitted use, or you mean in terms of the studies?
What if, I forget what the term is, the effect on traffic signals? What if the effect on traffic signals is unfavorable? We don't like it.
Yeah. So Mike, your question, whether beknownst to you or unbeknownst to you, is actually a sophisticated, astute question. Probably reaches beyond the scope of this board's discussion, but they are very good questions that the planning board should consider as to what the effect of these, how do you reconcile a traffic impact statement with the municipal land use law requirements on disallowing a use based on a traffic impact study and what those requirements are.
Okay, I just don't want to go down the path we did before. It's better to be as explicit as we can now and avoid debate later. My last point is,
I think we need to,
but I
Well,
would,
let you
Be mindful
finish
of
your
the
last
time.
point, then we'll move on.
all right.
Yeah,
But
finish
it-
your last point.
My point about, I don't, how many warehouses could fit there, that would be it. All the things that we don't want would be an additive effect. And not knowing what's gonna happen across 15 on Demarest, that's just gonna be, could potentially be additive to a really bad circumstance. So I think we need to be careful and look at the big picture as what the overall effect of these things could be, especially if more than one warehouse is permitted in this zone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public wishing to be heard on ordinance 2504?
I'm Stephanie Neufeld. I'm at 681 West Mountain Road. I've been there for over 30 years. My office, my practice is on Main Street. I've been there for over 20 years. I don't get this and I'm really lost. And I apologize. I've never been to a meeting here. So I do appreciate your public service. But when we have this hearing, will you give us more maps and give us more information? And I mean, when I look at this is really scary, what's going to be allowed. You know, and this is like what's allowed. So I don't understand, and I need some help thinking about preparing for your hearing. And I don't want to that's great. You're going to have a hearing and you're going to have a bunch of people coming in like bats out of hell, screaming and yelling. But I need, this information is not kosher to me. So how are you going to give us more information, be more specific about the areas, the ingress, the egress, the fire road access? I mean, or is this what is this what you're voting on? I mean, I understand that there's some information regarding the AM and PM traffic. I understand that's great. They're going to put trees in and alternate the trees every 7 feet. And that's wonderful, but this is huge. So can you, I'll leave it at this, but can you tell me, will you be giving us more information? Will you be giving us more visual information? You'll be able to explain the difference between package 1 and package 2. Package 2 apparently is further down Houses Corner Road. And not near my house at 681 West Mountain Road, which was between Houses Corner Road and Old Prospect School Road. And I don't mean to sound stupid and silly, but I don't understand. I've never been to a meeting like this. So if you guys could just clarify what you will be giving us for the hearing.
So just
That
a
would be
brief
great.
comment. We're not building anything. This provides
Right.
parameters for which somebody that wants to build could build. Now, anything that gets built would have to go to the planning board or the zoning board to make sure the application of what they're trying to build is complies with this.
Yeah.
But this isn't saying that something is going to be built there. This provides parameters for that. So there are no specifics for where roads are going to go or trees are going to go in something like this.
Okay, so when you have the hearing, you'll be able to, I mean, I understand nobody's looking to do this yet, but it's a big yet. Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm you can speak.
Mark Scott, I'm kind of new to this job, but I want to explain from 3,000 feet as I understand this, okay?
Okay.
Ordinance 2101 was passed during the darkness of COVID 2 administrations ago,
Okay.
2 rounds of elections ago. That allowed a building of 880,000 feet to come into this town. It also allowed 880,000 feet or X square feet, bigger or smaller, to come into this zone. What happened is during the election 2 cycles ago, when the no warehouse energy came about, the existing people that were in power at that time, in a panic, right, reduced the amount of square footage that could be built in our town to 175,000 feet. And they did the 175,000 square feet so that another 800,000 foot could not come in. All right. Those people were defeated anyways, but this 175,000-foot, this law or ordinance stood on PDRM on all, it did not cover this piece of, this zone. Okay. What we're doing here tonight is trying to at least say that if a developer comes in the next half hour and presents a 1 million square foot building, they will not be allowed. If we pass this, the biggest thing they can put in is 175,000 feet. Square feet. Now, wait. Please just hear me out. One more minute. All right. This is not perfect. It's not perfect. And we're redoing the master plan right now to figure out exactly what does this town want. And that's what the master plan people are working on to design this plan. And so hopefully there'll be more people, more meetings where the room is full, and there will be more input from the public as to how we should design Sparta, right? This was done in a panic years ago, and now we're just trying to correct a mistake. Is that kind of correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
That was in English, I hope. Okay.
So basically, you're saying that you're going to bring it down to a 4-acre building. 4 acres, right? 175 square foot is 4 acres.
175,000 square feet is the max.
And that's 4 acres.
Correct. Now,
That's
maybe we want smaller buildings, and maybe our master plan, hopefully our master plan will say, we don't want 175,000 foot buildings. We only want 50,000 foot, 80,000 foot buildings in this town, like we have had in the past, before 2101 was passed under the cover of COVID darkness two administrations ago.
When none of us knew what was going on.
Right. And so this big wave of no mega warehouse occurred, and now you've got 5 people here that were elected on a no mega warehouse slate, and what we're trying to do is to just stick our finger in the dike and stop this right now, so that nothing bigger than 175 can come in.
Right.
Hopefully, with our master plan, maybe we will maybe our master plan will restrict it to 80,000 feet in this zone, 60,000 feet in the zone. That's not determined as of yet.
so, but why don't you do that here?
Well, okay, because then we would have to go back to the beginning, and that would take forever, right?
So I think, I know it's your first time here.
I apologize.
I would encourage you to go to a planning board meeting. Why should you go to a planning board meeting? Because that's where this was originally discussed, right? The way these things work normally is that the planning board had a very fulsome discussion about this zone, and then it matriculates itself up to us. By the time it gets to us, it's already been pretty well vetted at the planning board, and so very nitpicky particular questions, and then I don't mean nitpicky disparagingly, I mean they're very good. Those were answered at the planning board level, and so by the time it gets to us, it's not really our job to start rewriting what the planning board has come up with. And so again, as Councilman Scott alluded to, it is sort of finger in the dike, because and also what Councilman Blumetti said, we can't wholesale change this zone right now because our master plan envisions developments of this size. And so if you limit it down to, if you cut out all the uses and do all that, that would be inconsistent with the master plan. There are vehicles to do that, but we're trying to prevent an application to come in that would exceed 175,000 square feet. Because if we don't pass this ordinance, one could come in tomorrow, and if this ordinance is adopted, they would not be restricted on square footage. But I think the points are well taken, that I think this entire zone should be looked at again. And, particularity about whether we even want the uses that are currently allowed, whether we actually want those uses, that's a master plan question. What we can't do at this stage is simply start carving up this ordinance and taking out uses, reducing square footage. That's just not, that doesn't happen at this level. We are given something from the planning board, and it's our job to either vote for it or against it.
And the people have spoken, right? They've spoken, and they said, we don't want to pave over Sparta. And it's taken a little while, but we have changed the makeup of the planning board to now hopefully agree with that what the public wants. And we're trying to get this done. And this is what we have today, 175,000 feet. In short order, and hopefully, it will change again and be made smaller. And so our town does not become paved over.
So you're saying if we become more involved in the planning
Sure.
board and attend these meetings and we vote as we wish, then you're saying this also could be adjusted? Is that
Correct.
what you're saying?
The master plan will look at everything. And just to answer two of your questions from earlier, which were great ones. You asked about maps and details and diagram. That all happens at the planning board level. So the planning board, we had a presentation, the planner was there, the attorneys, the planning board went through visuals, went through all the changes, came back a month later with more changes based on feedback. So that all was an iterative process back at the planning board level. I also heard you mention the word hearings. I just want to clarify two different hearings. So this is the hearing tonight. This was introduced a month or so ago. The hearing tonight is just for us to pass this amendment.
Okay.
Separately, the planning board holds its own hearings if there is an applicant coming in with a big lawyers and documents and diagrams, and they have a hearing at the planning board level, and you can attend that too and ask questions, and the planning board will go through that and deliberate whether or not that application is aligned with the law. So there's two separate.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you
Appreciate
for your
it.
time.
Also, you can go back and watch them on YouTube,
Okay.
the meetings. Planning board, zoning board, and the town council.
Which they're live. Okay.
Well, they were live.
They're on YouTube
Really
for the
fun when you
last.
can't sleep.
Bring your popcorn.
Okay.
Bring your popcorn.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public wishing to be heard?
Hello, my name is Barbara Gomes, 10 Links Court. I just have a clarifying question based on the last conversation. I don't think I heard it here tonight. I just want to make sure I remember this correctly because it has been 2 years. But the 175,000 square feet actually came from state planning guidance, right? So it was the state of New Jersey. It wasn't a rule, but they gave guidance to the planning board that the planning board then tried to adopt into the zones. That's where the 175 came from. I don't know that that's something you have to be married to when you're discussing the master plan. Is that correct, Councilman Blumetti? Weren't you on the?
I believe so. It wasn't
I think that's
involved
right.
way back then, but yeah, I know those standards are out there. Yeah, you're right. But the master plan and the township has its own authority when you redo a master plan to,
Make it whatever
Exactly.
you want it to be.
yes, yeah.
Based on hearing. what
You could
the
say
public-
no to,
Right, but based on hearing what
Yeah.
the public wants and balancing responsible
right.
development.
Yes. yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just one comment, because this conversation brought this to mind as well. 2 years ago, I felt like I couldn't come to a meeting without a lawyer to understand what was going on. So I compliment this council for bringing this information and making it transparent and for live streaming the meetings so people can understand what's happening in their backyard when they think there should be nothing happening in their backyard. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara. Any other member of the public wishing to be heard on ordinance 2504? Okay, seeing none. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2504?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2504.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilman Scott,
Yes.
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Chiarello,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, so ordinance 2504 is adopted, and I thank the public for coming out and asking very good questions. And I know this process can seem confusing. Heck, it's confusing to all of us up here, but we do the best we can to try to explain it to you. I know when you get a notice in the mail, it seems kind of scary. You don't know what it is. But that's the benefit of coming here, and I think everyone tried to answer as best we could your questions. But we'll take this opportunity to encourage you to get involved with the planning board process, the master plan, and provide your input, particularly if you live in a zone that you're worried about. I would encourage you to let your comments be known, your ideas. I know the planning board is very eager to hear them and to work with you, so thank you. Okay, we're now up to our second public comment period. Now, this is limited to the resolutions. So we're not yet at the point where you can just have a public comment on anything you want. That will come near the end. So this is a public comment period limited to the resolutions, which are, at least in my agenda, number 9. So we have 6 resolutions. So if you have a question with respect to those resolutions, please come forward.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank
Thank you.
you. You're welcome.
Boy, the thought of resolutions just really cleared the room.
All right.
Oh.
Just making sure the people who are getting up are actually exiting and not coming to the microphone.
I think they're-
Okay, seeing no one wishing to be heard on the resolutions, we will now move to the resolution portion. I would first make a motion to approve the following resolutions, 9-1, 9-2, and 9-3. So may I have a motion to approve resolutions 9-1, 9-2, and 9-3?
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So resolutions 9-1, 9-2, and 9-3 have been approved. We'll do the next resolutions one by one. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 9-4, which is a resolution for Governor's Council on Substance Use Disorder Fiscal Grant Cycle, October 2020 to June 2026.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve it.
May I have a second, please?
I will second.
And before we vote, Manager Zepp, could you tell us the purpose of this resolution?
Actually, if you don't mind, I know someone who knows more about it than I do.
I'm always,
And that's Chief McCarrick is on top of all this.
No way.
So this resolution is for funding, like you said, from the Governor's Council on Substance Use Disorder, and it goes to fund our municipal alliance. As you can see, the different categories there. The grant fund is $6,341. There's a cash match, which means the town has to show some type of match on what they do for that amount to get that amount. The programs that we do, a lot of our youth programs such as LEAD, our Junior Police Academy, Youth Engagement Training, we get that in cash match very quickly by our engagement there. The in-kind is for like facility use with the schools. So the schools have to show that they provide that $4,755 in, room use, facility use, things of that nature. So that adds up to the $6,341, and that's the money that we use towards programs for the municipal alliance, which goes back into prevention for the youth within the schools in our community.
thank you.
Very good.
And is there any specification in the grant about how the money can be spent? Like, they leave that up to the municipality, that as long as it's under the prevention rubric, then you are able to use
Yeah.
the money toward that?
So it's under the prevention. You actually make up a plan, which we'll be working on tomorrow in a municipal alliance meeting. The plan is approved by the committee, and then also has to be approved also by the county liaison for the municipal alliance.
Thank
And there's
you.
there's certain categories that it falls into that has to be approved by.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other member of the council have any questions before we go to vote? Okay, all those in favor of Resolution 9-4, say aye.
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 Resolution 9-4 is approved. Next up, may I have a motion to approve Resolution 9-5, which is a resolution of the Township of Sparta in support of a public referendum to appear on the November 4th, 2025 general election ballot to seek voter approval to continue Sussex County Farmland Preservation, Recreation, and Open Space Trust Fund for an additional 10-year period. So may I have a motion to approve Resolution 9-5 as read.
I move that we approve Resolution 9-5 as read.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
And Councilman Scott, I believe this was part of your initiative.
This is part of my
Yeah,
initiative,
so,
yes.
can you tell us what the purpose of this resolution is?
Yes. Commissioner Jack DeGroot, who's very supportive of the Farmland Preservation Program, has asked, there are multiple towns within the county that have acknowledged their support for a continuing of this farmland preservation program at the county level using county funds. And so what we're doing here tonight is just saying we also support using county funds. Now, of our budget dollar, 17 cents out of every dollar, of every tax dollar you spend, you pay, goes to the county. And then, to be honest, I don't know, a penny of that goes to the open space fund, or much less than that. I don't know exactly. But there's a bucket of money at the county level for open space. And we're saying we support that and we want this to continue to go on.
Thank you. Any other questions with respect to 9.5? Okay. All those in favor of Resolution 9.5, say aye.
Aye.
Resolution 9.5 has passed. Next up, may I have a motion to approve Resolution 9.6, which is a resolution to amend the Division of Alcoholic Beverage Control Licenses for BBT Management, Crane Restaurant Group LLC, Industry Restaurant LLC, and Marswell Incorporated. So I'm looking for a motion to approve Resolution 9.6. Well, I will make a motion, I just need a second.
I will second it.
Okay, and just take it back to council just for discussion before we vote. What's the purpose of this ordinance? Does anyone?
I'll defer to my clerk.
Yes, Mayor, this ordinance is to correct the addresses that were listed on the original resolution to coincide with their address that is on their actual ABC license. So there needed to be some corrections to it.
I got you. So on the licenses that these particular establishments have on their actual license has one address, and our resolution had a different address, and this is to simply.
Just simply.
Make it
The
consistent.
state realized the address that they listed it, but they wanted it to match their license, their
Okay,
actual
got you.
license, so it had to be
So it's
corrected.
Sort of a clerical resolution. Okay.
And it's correct that these are already in force. They've been in
Absolutely,
force, right? It's not
yes.
extending anything, it's just fixing
No.
it midterm.
Correct,
Yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
it's not changing the subject matter, scope, and nature of the actual licenses that have been granted to these particular establishments. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And can you explain what a pocket license is?
A licensee who owns a liquor license, but they don't actually have a location yet to use it. So it becomes a pocket license. It's like in their pocket.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from council before we go to vote? Okay. All those in favor of Resolution 9.6, say aye.
Aye.
Resolution 9.6 has passed. Okay, we are now up to the council liaison updates, and I will start to my far right with Councilman Chiarello.
I have nothing.
Nothing.
Oh.
I'll give a quick update on the Business Development Committee. We held our first meeting on February 27th and had a great conversation, great initial conversation. I'm looking forward to more of it. Several ideas were raised, very creative ones that we're going to continue discussing at the next meeting, which will be the fourth Thursday of March, which is also the 27th. Also wanted to share an informational event that's happening later this week, actually, on Thursday night. One of our members of the BDC shared it with us. So Jefferson Township's Business Development Committee, or maybe EDC, they might be called, they're going to have an open meeting on Thursday night with a representative, coincidentally, from the New Jersey State Liquor License Commission, discussing current changes and proposed changes to the state liquor licenses. So anyone who's interested, either private individuals, business owners, anyone that has interest in attending is welcome. It's going to be this Thursday night, March 13th, at the Betsy Ross Diner, which is at 5708 Berkshire Valley Road in Oak Ridge, part of Jefferson. And it starts at 6:30 p.m. So again, 6:30 p.m. on the 13th, Betsy Ross Diner. If you want to learn more and ask questions from the New Jersey Liquor License Commission representative. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. I have a few council liaison reports. First, Revolutionary 250. We had our meeting last week. We have begun narrowing down the list of activities that we would like to engage in, but that doesn't mean that we're not open to other ideas. We are planning on having a booth at Sparta Day. The purpose of that booth will to inform the public about what Rev 250 is, what some of the ideas that we have in mind, but also really is to encourage members of the public to get involved and engaged, because we want to make this committee is not simply to, come up with ideas that we'll then, implement ourselves. It requires engagement from the entire public, and we're trying to bring various stakeholders and constituencies involved. Examples are, as I alluded to before, there will be a tavern talk in January of 2026 with reenactors. There's also, we're working on, say, a mock trial, incorporating the members of Sparta High School to talk about a trial of either King George or Richard Ogden. So there's a whole bunch of different ideas. We're trying to narrow it down so we can start getting to the execution phase of this, which is eventually what are the programming that we're going to have, how are we going to execute doing it. And I'm very thankful we have a fantastic committee. I do have to raise up Stuart Schwartz, who's done a fantastic job getting us organized and, working on trying to execute that. So stay and, keep yourself informed. I look forward to seeing folks at Sparta Day, and we can talk about, some ideas for the Revolutionary 250. Next up, the Film Committee. We had a meeting last week, mainly to discuss the information that we received from the New Jersey Film Commission with respect to the amendments that they wanted. Members of the committee have also, again, we want to work with the state and getting that designation. And I think once we do, we also plan on releasing or having an event with respect to a short film that was filmed a few months ago in Sparta, and using that as a showcase event for this film committee, and to give people ideas about what the opportunity for entertainment production here. Next, I had a meeting with the Board of Ed. We met last week. What we discussed were just got an update about the referendum that I think will be in September of next year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that at least what they're aiming for? There's also discussing about signage around the schools, about whether you can, they have an issue sometimes with people during the school day, walking through the school parking lot, and they've had instances where people have nearly knocked on the window while kids are in the school. So there may be some signage, to discourage that type of behavior. So that was our meeting. Next up, the Trails Committee. We met as we are at the point where we've identified parcels within the trails that we want to do. We've identified the ownership interest, and as I alluded to, some of these you can take like a 2-mile trail, and within that 2 miles, there could be, half a mile of it is owned by the DEP, another half is owned by a private property owner, another half has a federal easement on it. So we're trying to figure out how we can then enable us to then turn that into a Sparta trail that we can have access to. And so we're busy doing that. And as you can imagine, you can't be super specific about what, I can't tell you who the property owner is and things like that. I'm not doing that to be vague. I'm doing that to protect the property owner. I'm doing that to protect Sparta. But when the time comes, when we really feel that it's the time to execute with, like I said, we will have a presentation. There will be, significant amount of some work to do, because you will need to get an easement. Sometimes even an easement on an easement. So it's not just we can wave a magic wand and have trails. You have to go through the sort of thicket of bureaucracy to deal with it. But we have a very committed group there. I know Ann was here. Thank you, Ann, for all the hard work you've been doing. I know Doug Dykstra has been tremendously helpful because he has all the survey maps. And he has worked with the Land Conservancy. He's worked with the DEP on these issues. So we're very lucky to have him. And the rest of this will be under new business. So that's all the council liaison reports that I have. So Margie?
I have, tomorrow night, there is a speaker at the Environmental Commission meeting, and it is plant this, not that. So it is something that you're very, very passionate about. And we have a terrific speaker coming, Lisa Chiarello, I believe, correct? From Rutgers.
It's Thursday night.
Pardon me? Thursday, did I say tomorrow? Oh, sorry, Thursday night. It is here, and it is all about what is the best sustainable for this area. So I'm sure you could come in and do takeaways and maybe even add something to it. And there was also a gentleman that came that was really concerned about the deer population and was eating all of his plants. I'm like, welcome to Sparta. And what you said about the, the deer taking down the trees. Well, there's eagles that killed the tree next door to me, but that's okay. They're beautiful. And it was kind of going anyway. But that was something I didn't, you don't think about. And there was so much to learn. So spread the word that Thursday night, they will have this speaker that Lisa will be speaking regarding this. It should be fantastic.
I heard she's lovely.
Pardon me?
I heard she's lovely.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've met her. She is. Earth Day is May 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, which anybody can come and help and clean up, contact the Environmental Commission, and we go around and we collect garbage that has been strewn everywhere, and there's different pockets that everybody can be assigned to. What else? There's also a survey, a trail map survey. Is there not? Neil, can you?
Yeah, there's.
And that's on the,
Neil?
Neil? Or Neil? Where is, this survey is located?
Yeah, I think we,
think-
because this came up earlier, I think we did get that.
put
There
it
should
on,
be a
right?
link on, because I know members, when this came out, I know members of our Trails Committee filled it out, and I think we did get it put on. It's a survey about, trails, what people want, et cetera. So that should be on the township's website.
Okay. I will have more about that for next time. They're trying to get a dark light or dark sky lighting ordinance to help with all of the amount of lights, the height of lights all along throughout our entire town, how it will affect the stars, what you see at night, and signage. And there is not one as really specific, but we're trying to put that together. That'll help from any development from here on out. Oh, that's Baggett Day, picking up litter. Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And also I have from LMCC, the bridge, so you all know, the bridge going across West Shore Trail right by the clubhouse will be started, the work will probably start in June after school and will probably last all summer, and they're working on a plan of how to reroute traffic. So that will, to be determined. To be determined. That is all I have.
All right, thank you. Councilman Scott.
Yes, I just want to add a little bit more to what Mayor Clark spoke about with the 250 celebration.
At the last meeting, he kind of threw me under the bus and said I would be reenacting crossing of Washington's crossing of the Delaware. But through some discussions over the past few weeks, this has really gotten some legs, and we will be reenacting the crossing of the Delaware. And we're starting to pull our team together. We've got our ship, and we're ready to go. So that will be happening. Tomorrow we have the Municipal Alliance meeting at 11 a.m. The planning board has hired an excellent top-flight new attorney and a new planner. And that's an exciting event. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now up to unfinished and new business, and I'll kick it back to you, Councilman Scott. Do you have any unfinished or new business?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Councilman Murphy?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, just a few. I attended a mayor's conference 2 weeks ago, and so that's what led to the discussion about the Arrive program, and I also got to tour the Jets training facility in Florham Park. And those of you who are Aaron Rodgers fans or not fans, I can tell you that his locker had a lot of boxes in it. So he may be moving out of there, whereas everyone else had all their equipment. So we'll see. Again, last week I attended the award of an Eagle Scout to Andrew Wilson, who is a Sparta resident. His Eagle Scout project was to build a storage for the oars that people may not even know that there's a Sussex County Rowing Club, and they practice on Lake Mohawk. And so a lot of it is there's high school kids who have now participated in that, who've gone on to win championships. They've had, I think, 36 participants just from Lake Mohawk alone. They have a whole master's program. Master's means over 40 or,
Like us.
yeah. So they're growing that program. It's a fantastic thing. So I'm looking forward to them doing even more and getting more people involved in that. I also had the opportunity last weekend to marry a very sweet couple, Eric Hudemoser and Isabella Pinheiro. I heard Portuguese spoken. They turned out one of them was from Brazil. So I got to brag to my Brazilian wife about marrying a Brazilian couple. Next up, even though this was not as part of my mayoral duties, it was part of my husbandly duties, but I think there's some pertinence to it. Last week, I went down to Trenton because my wife was testifying in front of the assembly with respect to the licensing committee. So we have a huge crisis in New Jersey with respect to the ability to grant licenses to people. So for example, with psychologists, they have the state psychological board, which gives out licenses to people. The problem is that board is supposed to have 10 people, it only has 4. And so without those people attending, they can't grant. People are waiting forever for their license to practice psychology. Now, this isn't just limited to psychologists. We had funeral directors there. We had chiropractors, same thing. Imagine dropping $195,000 on a chiropractic degree only to be told, well, we'll get to your, license later. So this has thankfully put a fire under the administration to start filling vacancies under this, because I can probably, assume that there's people in Sparta who've been waiting to get a license who haven't gotten one. And I know that we learned last night that after my wife testified that they asked her the next day almost about, give us names of people we can put on this board. And so there's just been a logjam with people getting their licenses for various professions. So looking forward to that. But I thought that was something that, maybe some people in Sparta have been waiting for their license for either a funeral director or a chiropractor or a nurse. There's a huge logjam here. So that is, and one other new business, I will be working with, and I've reached out to Commissioner DeGroot to talk about, how, because there is going to be some county involvement with some of the trails. I want to kind of read him into that, and so we can have a collaborative relationship with the county with respect to, having these trails, because I know there's, for example, one that's near Skooma that we'll need to work with. So in any event, I've reached out to him, look forward to meeting with him about how the county can help us and we can be partners in bringing more trails to Sparta. And with that, that is all my new or unfinished business. Oh, okay, nope, I'm wrong. I do have more on, I need to make appointments to the film committee. So I would make a motion to appoint to the film committee the following individuals: Kevin Ali, Robert Boyle, Angela DeLucia, Frank Dolce, Joseph Garcetti, Justin Karpowicz, Scott Landy, Sean Landy, Roy McDonald, George Segali. So my motion is to approve the following individuals as read. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say
Are you going
aye.
to assign them the positions that are needed for the film committee? And if not, then how are those committee positions assigned?
The structure, if you
Well, what I'll do is I'll first get them appointed to the film committee, and then we can do a separate motion to put them in their respective positions.
Okay.
Yeah. So first, let's get them on the committee. We've done it before, but we'll do it again. So all those in favor of making the following appointments to the film committee, say aye.
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 All right, the following individuals now. May I have a motion to appoint the following individuals to the following positions?
Can I ask a question? Why do we have anything to do with that, right? Like, we don't have anything to do with the Business Development Committee, who goes into what slot. I mean, why are we dictating that? Let the film committee do what they want. It's their committee.
I think because it's in the ordinance.
That's my understanding of how the ordinance was written.
Yeah, we put it in the ordinance.
It's in the ordinance.
Yeah,
The other
so-
ones are resolutions.
And the purpose for putting it in the ordinance was simply so that when an entertainment production company comes, they know who they should be reaching out to and
Okay.
who will liaise with them.
All right.
And so that was sort of the reasoning. So,
Some organization.
yeah, it's for organization. So I'd make a motion to appoint the following individuals to the following positions. Chairperson, Frank Dolce. First Assistant Chair, Justin Karparchowicz. Second Assistant Chair, Roy McDonald. Chief Creative Ambassador, Kevin Ali. Chief Administrator, Scott Landy. And Communications Coordinator, Aidan Mahoney. And the non-voting members are Sean Landy, Robert Boyle, Mike Puccio, and George Segali.
What was the name that you gave after Chief Administrator?
Yes, Aidan Mahoney.
Did he send an application in, Aiden
It
Mahoney?
was my understanding that he had, but I can, we can double check that. I can
confirm.
leave him off.
I don't recall getting
Okay.
it yet, but I can confirm with you tomorrow.
Okay, well, we can, if he has, or, we can, so I will strike that motion to make the next one. So the motion is to approve Chairperson Frank Dolce, First Assistant Chair Justin Karpowicz, Second Assistant Chair Roy McDonald, Chief Creative Ambassadors Kevin Ali, and Chief Administrator Scott Landy. So may I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next, I need to make an appointment to the Trails Committee. Mr. Wolf has applied for the Trails Committee. He has demonstrated an interest in this. He has also been helpful in working and finding, he has a contact with, there's a property owner that we need to speak with who owns land on a trail that we are interested in, and so he's been very helpful with reaching out to them. So I'd make a motion to appoint Jeff Wolf to the Trails Committee. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Jeff Wolf is now on the Trails Committee. All right, anyone else with new business or old business?
Nothing for me.
Okay. All right, we are now up to the final public comment period. Please state your name and name and address for the record. Please be mindful of the 5 minutes. And you are not limited to what is on the agenda or what is on in a resolution.
Hi, Beth Broderick, North Shore. I just have a quick question regarding your cannabis ordinances. Why are you worried about distances from schools and churches and houses and not just putting it towards the ED zone?
I think, well,
We can't really answer.
yeah, that's a policy question that I will, reserve. But I think that discussion of why we picked the zones that we picked, why the buffers are what they are, that's a sort of a policy one that it would require some degree of deliberation. So I would, I think you would hold that question until the hearing. Otherwise, we end up deliberating and discussing it.
I have to wait 2 weeks and then I can ask that question earlier in the meeting and not have to try to stay awake.
Well, I'll try to remember it, and I think that topic will come up. I'm sure. So we can address that at the hearing portion.
Okay, and my other question is, do you have an update on the gas station on West Shore and what he's doing with all of his carts?
I don't have an update for you.
It never decreased and now it's creeping back up and he's parking on the grass that's part of Lake Mohawk.
But I am scheduled to see him tomorrow, actually, and I will ask the owner directly.
Now he's keeping 2 big tubs behind on the parking lot side. One of them's rusted, one's blue, and zoning in the town said it was not a zoning issue. So I'm just curious as to why he's keeping a rusted container right there also.
To what?
He's got 2 big containers, like barrels. One's blue and one's rusted. And I called zoning and they said that the barrels are not a zoning problem. It's like not a zoning issue. So I was just curious if there was anything on that or am I just making it worse with the guy?
Jim, whose issue would that be?
I could have code enforcement look at it. I'll talk to who you spoke to and find
Okay.
out what
'Cause I don't know zoning.
it's about, but, so you have a concern about 2 barrels at a gas station?
Barrels, I don't know what he's keeping there and is that allowed? Because
Behind the property?
Blessings, it's on the parking lot side behind the cars. And I know when it was Blessings, he didn't store stuff like that. So
It's
I'm
on
just
his property, right?
Yeah, it's on his property behind some of the cars that he's got in the lot. I was trying to count cars one day and noticed them and got distracted. and-
I am going to see him tomorrow, and I'll ask him about what's in the barrels.
Okay.
It's in the
I was-
barrels.
I'm just curious.
Maybe all the license
Yeah.
plates go on the car.
We could start it. I'm okay with that. I'll head that one if you want.
So Beth, even if you want to shoot me an email with questions that you have that you literally want me to sit and
Okay.
talk to them, please feel
Okay.
free to do it. I know it's the barrels and what's going on with the
Number of cars and
the
what he's
number of
doing and
cars.
why.
Okay,
About license plates.
All right, that's all I got.
okay.
For sale signs.
Good evening. Joan Furman, West Shore Trail. I have a couple questions. First one is, did you decide who the negotiating entity is going to be for the state plan cross-acceptance process?
Say that again, and I think the answer will be no, because I have no idea what, at least I don't, maybe someone else does.
Because it has to be decided soon. So this is the state plan that they're trying to get all the municipalities together, and I could read sections of it if you're not familiar with it, but they are trying to get it together.
Joan, I've been handling this with Dory, and I had some input also with Catherine. They suggested with the state plan that it get discussed at the planning board level.
Right, it's coming up next Wednesday, but you need to decide who the negotiating entity is first.
Right,
whether it's the
and I
county.
understand that's not as a priority as having the primary folks like Dory and myself as the contacts for this state plan.
Okay, so I can talk to you before Wednesday and?
Yes, Dory's familiar with it. She and I have been working on it today, actually.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
worked
I
on it a
didn't, I
bunch
just
today.
thought of it as I was sitting here, or I would have called, so I'll follow up on that. I did have some questions, some clarification on the cannabis ordinances, and you can tell me if I have to wait 2 weeks or I can just clarify some of it now. One is on the definition of cannabis. May I ask that? Well, I'm going to ask, and you can tell me otherwise. It says, all parts of the cannabis plant, whether growing or not, the seeds thereof, and every compound. So if you're taking the whole plant and every compound, does it matter whether it's a male plant, a female plant, or a hybrid plant?
No idea. I
Okay.
don't, I,
What I'm getting to is,
Let me ask, are you asking as a citizen or as a
I'm
chairman
asking
of the
as
planning
as a
board?
citizen.
Okay, I think
As a
that's a
citizen.
careful distinction.
Yes. So if it's and I'm not good at this stuff, I don't really understand it all, but if it's a male and a female plant together, that's what hemp is. So is this cannabis ordinance going to also control hemp and the CBD?
I have to interject. I don't think, this is a discussion about the hearing. This should be at the hearing, right? This is
I believe that's
details
correct.
around the
Well,
ordinance that we're going to be discussing and policy and decisions and details. I mean, I think you
just
can ask,
asking
but
for-
I don't think we should be.
She can ask any question she wants. It's the council's prerogative whether to respond to it or not.
Okay, yeah, I don't need an answer. All I know is maybe, could you please look at that? Because I want to get an understanding whether gummies and all of the CBD are going to be under this cannabis ruling or not.
okay.
Okay? I think it's important to clarify. And another question here that I think maybe should be clarified. A social equity business, there's nothing mentioning that in the ordinance. Is that something that you're aware of?
Hmm. Yeah, we are aware of it.
Okay. So if you're following the Cannabis Regulatory Commission website, if there are two people who are equally qualified, but one is a convicted felon, they would get the priority for the license.
That's correct. The felon gets extra points for being a felon and more likely to receive the license.
Correct. But there's nothing really in here, you talk about the women and the disability, et cetera, but if that person is put up against somebody who's a felon, the felon will get the priority.
Not in this, so you have to understand that there's a Cannabis Regulatory Commission, a
Right.
separate step, which we have zero control over, right? That's different. And just because you get a license from the state doesn't mean you get a license in Sparta, right? It's not a rubber stamp. So someone could get, approval from the state, doesn't mean they can come to Sparta and get approval. There'll be a whole other range of factors that are built into this ordinance that make that consideration. So just because but we require as a step, you first have to get approval from the state before you can come to us.
Right.
Yeah.
But assuming that's how they will be coming to you, then,
Well, it's up to us. So you have to factor in all the factors that are built into the ordinance itself, right? So it's not just because, like I said, that they give a priority doesn't mean we necessarily have to give a priority.
okay.
So we can
maybe you
reduce
should
the
make
number
it-
of felons.
I just think it should be made clear because I couldn't figure that out while I was reading this. And then the last thing is once the businesses are established, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission website says that those businesses will be among the first in line to receive cannabis retailer licenses in the state and can subsequently apply for a cannabis consumption area endorsement, which means either, and I know it's not in our ordinance, but it means they can apply to get a license for smoking indoors or outdoors.
No, that's wrong. They cannot. You have to have an entirely separate ordinance for consumption. You can't,
I think we need to be careful of
yeah, so,
policy discussion.
yeah, so just, yeah, that would require a whole separate ordinance.
All right, because that would change a lot of things, so, that is not being considered for Sparta.
No.
All right, that's about all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? All right.
Jenny Derrick, Tap into Sparta. This is about consistency. So there are currently, and it's been brought up previously this evening about looking at our zoning and, about infractions of our zoning rules. And I know we have a zoning enforcement agent or a code enforcement agent, but it seems like, I just wonder what they're actually doing. Just drive down Park Lake Road and you see code infractions. You don't even have to be very versatile in the ordinances themselves. They're all over the place. Also, Airbnbs are still listed for Sparta. So what are we doing to curb that? We have to be consistent. If we're going to have these rules, we need to enforce them. Otherwise, why bother? It seems you can go anywhere in town and find a zoning ordinance infraction. And I would just ask that you please take it seriously, because not just what you do sets the rules, and then there's the expectation that they're going to be followed, and that doesn't seem to be a priority.
Just on that, I think that I've had discussions, and I think our zoning department does the best job that they can with the staff and resources that they have. It's impossible for a zoning office, unless you want to have 10,000 people in it, to have them enforce every single possible infraction. And so what I would like to, and I'm working with the zoning department too, is to prioritize, right? What is it that are the violations that are the most significant? What are the ones that are the biggest threat to safety, health, and welfare, and prioritize those. But I think it's, I get the point about we have ordinances, we should enforce them, but we don't have unlimited resources, we don't have unlimited time, and so I don't want it to be viewed that, somehow our zoning department, we're looking down on them. I think they're doing the best job that they can with the resources that they have. But I'm with you that there needs to be some prioritization. And ones that we find where there's blatant violations, particularly if there's a threat to safety, health, and welfare, those should be cured immediately, and all resources should be devoted to those.
Jennifer, I spent some time with our new planning board attorney, and we drove around and we saw violations in the town. And he explained to me and the other people in the car that in many other towns that he has worked with, that they have zoning enforcement officers that are really self-fulfilling. In other words, they're giving out fines at a rate that pays their salary, if not turns excess cash over to the town. And so I think that's an excellent idea, and I hope that that can get some legs, and we can figure out a way to make that work here in this town.
There are some important things, especially with the PDRM2 that we were talking about earlier today, that within that ordinance, it's quite complex, that it establishes the ability for the experience that the town should be collecting fees. And is that being done? The ownership of that property changed. Were they held to have to add a bond, pick up the bond that they're supposed to have, and then from there have the fees imposed on a regular basis? Is that land being inspected to make sure that all of the intricacies of that ordinance are being upheld? These things are important because there are people that live there. Our residents have to drive around and see these things, and that's why we have the ordinances. And you sit up there and say, we assure you that these things are going to be, that we're doing the best we can to keep our town as beautiful as we want it to be. And yet you drive down Park Lake Road and there's storage containers, Connex trailers in the front yard. There's tractor trailers nose to tail parked overnight where that's not allowed. There's no landscaping where there's supposed to be landscaping. So who's following up? The planning board makes their approvals, the zoning board makes their approvals, and it seemed with contingencies and ideas of what they're supposed to be doing, and then there's no follow-up. There's agreement, it's on paper, but there's no follow-up. And the town residents are expecting that there is.
Anyone else for public comment?
Oh, I hope I didn't break this. Hi, Ann Lopuck at 32 East Shore Trail. I just want to make a comment about the cannabis ordinance and the fact that it's even being brought to the table. I feel like it's sort of ironic that you have resolution for the Governor's Council on Substance Use Disorder looking for a fiscal grant, when at the same exact meeting, we're talking about an ordinance that's going to allow cannabis in our town. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to say it one more time. I keep writing letters and I keep coming to the meetings, and I really don't understand why we're trying to push this forward. Oh, and there's an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday just about this in Pueblo, Colorado.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kristen Mazzarella, 51 Springbrook Trail. I'm also commenting about the cannabis ordinance. I'm really discouraged with the town council for even bringing it to the table in regards to wanting it to be within 250 feet of our children's schools, playgrounds. Our children are so vulnerable. They are easily influenced, and to look out their school window and see a cannabis store within 250 feet. We've worked so hard as parents to teach our kids, not to do drugs. And cannabis is drugs. It is. It may be legalized, but it does have ramifications. If you look at Colorado, Colorado was the first state to legalize marijuana, but 65 jurisdictions have now banned it because they've seen how bad the ramifications are, whether it's traffic, accidents, crime has risen. Why do we want to bring that to our town? Why do we want to put it within 250 feet of our children? For what? Money? We're putting the residents of Sparta at risk for money. I mean, I just feel like, we've worked so hard to try and keep drugs away from our town, to keep our town safe. And yet here we are trying to bring it into our town. I mean, I take my son to school. I drive through Newton. We smell cannabis. We smell marijuana at 7:30 in the morning. I mean, do we really want to bring that into Sparta? I'm just really discouraged at the people who are trying to push this. And, I know some of you have children, and I just can't believe that you're trying to push this in our town where we want to keep our children and our residents as safe as possible.
I'll say that at the hearing, you will get an explanation about the buffer zones and where that came from and its origin and other explanations. And I think, so I look forward to that discussion. But your point is well taken. Thank you.
And you do bring up a good point about how the tide seems to be turning. In New Jersey, in fact, 51% of the communities 5 years ago said, we don't want pot, right? That number is now 71%. Over 100 plus more communities have said, we do not want marijuana in our town. So they have exited the marijuana program. And, some of the nicer towns in this state have changed. South Orange, Maplewood, Montclair, Red Bank, Morristown, Princeton, Madison. I'd much rather be fashioned after those towns than Patterson, Newark, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you for coming.
Any other member of the public wishing to be heard? Okay, I was remiss in announcing about cleanup, the Keep Sparta Beautiful. That is April 6th. Making sure I got the date right. Yeah, it is.
Well, Earth Day is May 3rd,
May 3rd.
and pardon me? April 5th and
Yeah,
6th?
so April 5th and 6th, that's what I
Bag
thought.
Day?
Yeah, it's Bag Day, and there's certain locations, and Jenny has already done a very good article in March 9th about this. So if you want to participate in Bag Day, there's certain locations that various folks are gathering to clean up and pick up, so I encourage everyone to participate in that. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Well,
May I
one
have-
more thing. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I hope that you bring all your neighbors on the 25th, which will be 2 weeks from today, when we really discuss this cannabis ordinance. Thank you.
Yep, and so I'll start again. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Did you just lose something?
No, I don't think so.
Something just flipped over here.